everybody, and welcome to day number 2 of the 2017 DreamHack Hearthstone Grand Prix for the very first time in Atlanta, Georgia. My name is Cora Songbird Georgiou, and I'm joined on the desk by Lothar and Lorinda, who are going to be bringing us our first round of the day, Swiss round number 6. Guys, it was a long day yesterday. How are you holding up? Lorinda, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm good for this already. It's always good to get into day 2, where you start to be able to get more idea of who might make that top 16 as it shapes up. Yeah, I'm good to go for this one.
Well, it seems like we are shaping up the top of the bracket. At the same time, it's not that important who is actually now 6-0, because still he can finish up 6-3.
Yeah.
It's all about those elimination matches basically right now. So everyone who is sitting at 2 losses, one more loss, you're out. You can't really make it to the top 16. Those are the important matches for now. Those are the more emotional matches. And those are the ones I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people on those 2 losses, big names as well, hanging in there. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes down.
Yeah, those are always my favorite matches as well. But if you guys weren't tuned in yesterday, a little bit of a rundown on how exactly the DreamHack Hearthstone Grand Prix works. It is a Swiss tournament bracket. We played 5 rounds yesterday. We're going to play an additional 4 today, and then we will cut to the top 16, where we will play a single elimination bracket to find our champion, which will happen tomorrow. It is last hero standing format. Bring 4 decks, ban 1. And LHS was the format that I got into when I first started playing Hearthstone, before Conquest ever existed. And now DreamHack is one of the big major tournaments that's keeping this format alive. So I always love seeing what decks the players decide to bring and the strategies that they bring. What have we seen since yesterday? I
mean, one of the big differences in LHS these days from when you were playing it before you started casting everything was, like, you saw the deck lineups you saw the classes, but you knew what the decks were. And now we're getting like 2 or 3 decks for every class. It's much harder to do those band stages.
Oh, definitely. And as we have seen yesterday, actually, first match of the day was a priest versus a priest. And no one from us actually expected that kind of result when it comes to lineups, right?
Have they finished counting all the cards that were played in that game?
No,
I think they're still playing packs.
Yes, exactly. I think there was 7 at least packs opened, not only played, but opened. And actually, we have seen the cards from all those packs. And apart from that, I think it was like 9 Dragonhead operators.
Yeah, it was completely insane. So we're seeing some really silly stuff, but it's much more entertaining that way, of course.
Yeah, that single game was longer than a lot of the full series that we did have. But we have the standings ready to check out who our top 20 players are going into round number 6. So let's see who the 5-0s and some of the 4-1s are. So our 5-0s, Lance, ChrisleBlanc, Caravaggio, Sintherius, and Hot Girls. Do you guys know anything about these players?
I've not been able to find a great deal. They're guys that make Legend regularly. You can tell that from their HCT points. I found that Sintherius plays a lot of open cups, like he's regularly a player in those things, so he's used to the competitive format. But I have to admit, there's not a great deal on any of these guys.
Well, hopefully we'll get to know them right now, right? This is the reason why you're playing in an open tournament, to make yourself known like for the community, basically, right? So when you're a 5-0 and you're not a big name that is known to everyone, well, there's your chance. So,
and don't look over your shoulder at what's chasing you.
Yeah, there's some scary names right behind in the 4-1 slot. Chalky, Snail, who has had an HCT finish, Zalay, Astrogation, Amnesiac, Just Saying, Phenom, Pilu we saw yesterday, upset Frozen. There's still some big names left in this, but this standing will likely change drastically by the time we're done with our Swiss rounds.
I just wanted to say that you don't look behind you because there's a snail chasing you. So I guess that's not that big of a deal. You can kind of run away from that one. But other than that, we have really stacked lineup in those one-loss players. So we have seen actually a bigger deal of Chucky and Amnesia yesterday on stream. 2 matches from both of those guys that were really impressive when it comes to the style that we're executing those matches. You can see the difference between a great player and a, let's say, mediocre legend player, right? So it's something really, really exciting to see all those guys just playing out with 200 players actually here.
Yeah, we had about 190 players starting off in the tournament. Of course, some of them have dropped so far. But another big story is that this is the first American DreamHack event, excuse me. There's Montreal as well in North America, other than Austin in the United States. And our DreamHack Austin champion for this year was Shoop. And Shoop actually went 2-3 the first day and is now out of the tournament. So we're not going to be seeing a repeat performance from him. We also have Chalky, who was the DreamHack Austin champion in 2016, and Terrence M, who was the runner-up. Chalky's at 4-1. I believe that Terrence is still in the tournament as well, but I'm not positive of his record.
Okay. Terrence and Sayan, the only two players who've got to both top 16s at Austin. Sayan is 4-1. And I made a note of some notables at 3-2 as well. These are the guys, if they lose one more, they're probably out, although one 6-3 player might get lucky and get through with all the 7-2s.
Oh, really?
We've got Monsanto, we've got Tic Tac, Racy, Sidonia, Neyman, Frozen, Muzzy, Impact, Green Sheet, Killing All Day. All those guys, if they go 4-0 today, can still get in that top 16. It's a bit of a lineup.
That's a lot of big names in there as well. So a lot of these guys just hanging on barely, hoping to sweep today and make it into the cut for top 16. That's where the money is. That's where the HCT points are. That's where the glory and the pride all culminates. But let's take a look at our very first match of the day in Swiss round number 6. Who are you guys hoping it's going to be? I don't actually know who it is yet.
Want to see more Chucky.
What?
We think it's going to be the 5-0 guys, but I'm hoping to see some of these 4-1s, the Chucky and stuff. But we will be seeing those guys when they become like elimination matches later on. So probably going to see the 5-0s now, get to know these guys a little.
Well, right you are.
The pair, Sintherius versus ChrisleBlanc. Is it like a relative to the guy that played in Friends?
What, Matt LeBlanc?
Yeah.
I don't know. We should
Is that
ask him
also an
later.
actor from Friends? Matt LeBlanc?
Yeah. That's what Lothar just said, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Oh, I thought you said France. Oh, my bad.
The actor from France. I mean, it's a French-sounding name. I guess it makes sense.
It's just my accent making it hard.
I'm sorry, Lothar.
Don't worry about it.
I'll just go for now. No, but yes, Sintherius versus ChrisleBlanc, two of our 5-0 players. Two players that we don't know much about, but underdogs are something that I love seeing succeed. We had Harry Seldon at DreamHack Valencia, who was an underdog that people didn't know really anything about, came in and took down the entire tournament. So it's very possible that one of these two guys could be the champion.
The storyline of DreamHack Valencia was a really stacked top 16, but all of the known players were knocked out in the top 16, which, by the way, was kind of overlooked by a lot of players and fans as well, which kind of is...
Tell them off, Lothar. Tell them to pay more attention.
Rein it in, Lothar. Rein it in.
Top 16 and not on top 8, it seems to be unreasonable to just ignore the top 16 cut, which is during the day 2 and not during day 3. So there was a lot of noise in the community about the fact that not a single known player made it to the top 8, and that should be like a legitimate reason to think about switching from Swiss, which I disagree, and I feel like the community is just nitpicking.
Yeah, I agree. And Harry Seldon tweeted out straight after, this is the beginning after he won that event. Most people are like, oh, this is the end, I'm going to retire, I've won a DreamHack. No, Harry Seldon this is the beginning. Ben, who came second, is starting to stream more now. I know that Evangelion, who won it the year before, was an unknown, is now a big streamer in Spain.
He wasn't that unknown. I remember getting to know Evangelion in 2015 when I was first time at Valencia. Him actually and his brother, the Fallen. They were already playing at that point, and I think I played against Evangelion that tournament, and I was kind of impressed by his play. So I spoke with him after the game, and I'm really sure I played against him. But we talked about during the tournament, and I was just interested in the Spanish community, and he was back then already known as one of the best players in Spain.
Yeah, I mean, something that Cora will have missed, like that Spanish community is insane. AK Wonder flew from China straight into DreamHack Valencia just to see how the Spanish players were doing. Not because he could play or anything, because he missed the start. He literally got off the plane in Spain. He had people actually meeting him at the airport.
Yeah, it's absolutely a fabulous community, I'm sure, at Valencia and as well here in Atlanta. But let's take a look at the picks and bans for our very first match, Sintherius versus ChrisleBlanc. Let's see what these guys have chosen. We didn't see them on stream yesterday, so we don't know anything about what they've brought. So Sintherius, Warrior, Paladin, Druid, Shaman has been banned. And ChrisleBlanc, Warrior, Paladin, Druid, Shaman has been banned. So these are absolutely mirrored lineups and completely mirrored bans.
And I think this is the first time I'm actually going to be casting a lineup like that.
Yeah, this is the lineup that if you had to write down a lineup that you would expect to see a lot before the tournament started, that kind of makes sense. It's the whole you have to ban Shaman so the Druid gets played lineup.
I'm kind of surprised by the lack of Mage, though, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the strongest classes, but at the same time, when you think about it, Warrior, a strong archetype in both mid-range and aggro. Paladin has access to almost every single tool in the game, especially with Relying Blade being a card right now, right? Druid with 2 very strong archetypes, and Shaman, I think, with 1 strong archetype that is like in the meta game, but still such a powerful deck that it draws out bans a lot.
Yeah, something as well that we learned from that top 16 in Valencia, we're seeing it here now. When the players are less known, they've had less exposure, sometimes they find it incredibly nerve-wracking. I think even the top players say they still find it nerve-wracking the first few times, and it's interesting how they get on with this.
Yeah, I actually spoke with Pac-Man yesterday. Or was I actually today? And anyway, but I spoke with Pac-Man. He told me that he was really nervous while playing on the stage, which is something that is catching up with a lot of players that are actually playing in the first time in a big tournament. Something that people overlook a lot of times when you're just, you know, playing on stage. Nerves get through.
Yeah, DreamHack can be a breakout performance for a lot of new players, but it can also be incredibly nerve-wracking. We're going to see how our 2 5-0 players handle the limelight. It's Sintherius versus ChrisleBlanc coming up right after this.
Hi. Who goes? I'll go.
Well, long time no see. Long time no see.
It's been a while, Lothar. Been a while. So.
Exactly. So
going into this, like we said that at Valencia, do you think these guys will be affected?
By the nerves? I guess so. Like, if they never played on stream, if they never played on a big stage, this might be a huge impact on their execution.
Right. I mean, the one thing is they've got an extra life in hand. 7 and 2 will get you through this Swiss portion. You're 5 and 0. They've got the backup plan that it's not all in like the top 16.
Yeah. But still, like, you know, it might affect a little bit both of them. So it's even out.
Yeah.
But let's jump into the game
because how it goes.
Players are ready. So let's go. First match of the day. Patches already appearing, and Warrior against Paladin.
And what can we say about Paladin, except it looks like UK Paladin. We've got a Dread Corsair in the opening hand.
Yeah, I just, you know, kind of use my eyes here to make a special movement whenever I hear UK Paladin.
What's wrong with UK Paladin?
Never mind, never mind.
Just roll your eyes at the UK community.
Yeah, exactly.
We're great at Hearthstone, man. We came second at DreamHack Valencia. How many Polish players in the top 16?
In that tournament? Not a single one.
Yeah, exactly. So we're obviously just better.
All right. Well, it's Pirate Warrior against the Paladin, or UK Paladin, whatever you want to call it. Actually, the fact that Relying Blade and the Dread Corsair is being picked in this this deck makes a huge difference in this matchup, because otherwise you're kind of left without any defense lines unless turn 6, basically, when you just drop that Spike-Ridge Steed. Having the access to a very cheap and decent, let's say, Count Minion, just to stem the bleeding for 1 turn, might make a difference between losing and winning, because you have more time to get that Spike-Ridge Steed out, which is like a huge roadblock. And this is why a lot of Pirate Warriors have started playing Spellbreakers in their decks.
Yes, to just get rid of all those huge taunts. Again, not just Spike-Ridge Steed, but basically anything with taunt. Interesting already here, ChrisleBlanc has the Murloc Synergy in his hand. He has Hydrologist, he has Rockpool Hunter, but realizing that whichever one he plays is going to die. So he played with the highest health, which basically defends his face for longer, gives him a chance to pick up other stuff. He didn't even bother trying to get the Hydrologist out there and get it buffed, because it's just never going to happen.
Yeah. I think I'm not blaming him at all. Like, you have to be fast against Pirate Warriors. Like, most situations, it doesn't really matter the synergy between your minions if you're dead.
Right.
You just need to have that defense line as soon as possible in case there wouldn't be a Fear War Axe for Sintherius. His Rockpool Hunter would actually make a difference between soaking 1 more damage and also getting that attack from the warrior into the minions. So basically saying you can't use heroic strike that turn even if you'd like to.
Yeah,
or
also,
if you'd like to, then you soak up more damage.
If they're on a weapon buff train where they just keep buffing the weapon every single turn, that's another charge of maybe what would it be, a 5-3 or a 5-4 later weapon eaten up as well. So works out well to defend as long as you possibly can. And sometimes the obvious lines are not the lines you should take. And it's going to be a really close call at the moment.
Oh man, it's a close call. It's a lot of damage coming to his face. Look at that. Start of turn 4, and ChrisleBlanc is already at 17 HP. 4 damage is staring at his side, I mean, at the Sintherius side of the board. So basically, he starts with 13 before even a single card from Sintherius is being played.
Yes, you don't like having to put your face into a 5-3 minion when you're defending a Paladin into Pirate Warrior. Of course, normally this deck for the Paladin is normally very tempo-based. You don't mind absorbing that damage.
Yep.
But when your opponent is just doing this to you, you mind, and you mind a lot.
Well, it's not looking good for ChrisleBlanc, even with that Dread Corsair for 1 mana. Yeah. You have to play it first. Yes, I was worried for a second that this might cost LeBlanc the game already. If he would have just attacked with the weapon, decrease the buff from the Dread Corsair, would have cost him a lot.
Sintherius' next pickup is going to be absolutely gigantic here. Basically, he needs to draw any source of damage before ChrisleBlanc draws a second taunt or a buff or a way to get established. But for now, he has a chance. Even the True Silver could just gain that little bit of health to keep him alive a touch longer, but this is going to be crucial. Oh.
I'm a little bit surprised that ChrisleBlanc actually played the Noble Sacrifice right now.
Right, and he's been punished, I feel.
He might get punished, yes. I mean, there are 2 options. Basically, it's Redemption or Getaway Kodo. I'd rather, you know, the pick in this matchup, Redemption would be way better than Getaway Kodo. So I don't suspect any Paladins players picking up Getaway Kodo in this matchup at all, unless the other options are completely useless. So it has to be Redemption, or it has to be Noble Sacrifice. Sintherius might actually read into it and check with the 1-1 first, since it's not that big of a deal. But what I usually like to see from players when they have the Noble Sacrifice in this matchup is to save it when your opponent actually has no option then to use the weapon or at least a Corcoran Elite.
However, Chris is nodding here because I think he may have gone for the double bluff. I think he may have gone for the illogical play on purpose here. I think it was a deliberate trap because then the 1-1, the attack from Sintherius makes sense if ChrisleBlanc's secret makes sense. But Chris actually just double bluffed there, and Sintherius used attack with a weapon, and it's actually bought ChrisleBlanc a turn.
Well, it did. So kudos to him. Worked out in the end, but now he is facing a huge problem.
Yeah, this 8-8 is indeed a huge problem. How on earth do you defend against this from just killing you next turn? And yeah, just gaining life from True Silver is the only way he's got to stay alive.
Unfortunately for him, he is looking at, you know, a comfortable 10 health right now, but 4 damage from the Fury Warrior. Oh, he's already preparing to concede. Don't be like that, ChrisleBlanc.
That concede APM.
Let us watch the game first. Really, seriously.
I mean, that's how he feels about it. He doesn't want us to see that bitter Tide Hydra. It's just a bitter concede Hydra.
Right, well, for Sintherius, it's a matter of saying, I guess, you attack with the weapon and then take 8 damage to the face.
Yeah, that's the most likely option. Of course, he has just got to double check there's no craziness can happen to him. He is down to 14 himself, so just taking a moment there to count up and be sure he doesn't make some tragic accident. But now Chris needs to draw a Spike Ridge Steed, and that is not a Spike Ridge Steed. And now he just gives it up. And Sintherius takes a 1-0 lead in this 5-0 match.
The Spike Ridge Steed would actually make a huge difference, would give him at least 1 more turn of having option to draw a second one.
And hitting the Hydra for 3 when it attacks in.
Yeah. I mean,
health total was getting low. He was down to 14 on the other side.
Wasn't that 24?
I think it was lower than that.
I can't remember.
Yeah,
but
it goes
without Spike Ridge Steed, basically when someone plays a Hydra, and I'm guessing the UK Paladin doesn't really play Peacekeepers?
It may have been 24, and it doesn't play Peacekeepers, no. It's got some weird synergies, but no, it plays like Argent Squires, but no, nothing...
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, because you have no space for tech cards like that, although they would be very impressive in this lineup against Pirate Warriors. Especially now, since more Pirate Warriors are picking up on Hydras, It seems like a decent choice in most of the matchups, and it's only sucked against Paladins, basically, with Peacekeepers. And when that's gone from most of the Paladins, well, obvious choice.
And this is a spot you never want to be in Last Hero Standing, when you are 1-0 down and you have to queue the mirror match as your counter.
Yeah. So that means that ChrisleBlanc is playing a Jade Druid instead of the aggro.
Right.
Druid, because that will be one of the best matchups that you can actually have against the Pirate Warrior. But fortunately for ChrisleBlanc, Sintherius is sitting with the patches in hand. Slightly unfortunate, especially when there's already a Soci Captain in Sintherius' hand that could have been coined out next turn and get a very big patches.
Yeah, the rest of his hand is actually pretty sharp looking, but a lot of that is because patches is so good. And Chris's hand, even though he has this early start, even though he didn't have the patches, it's one of those hands that can turn into a good hand, but for now it's a little bit wobbly. He's going to have a do-it-yourself War Axe. It's going to cost him 3 cards to build it.
Yeah, although I'm really surprised that he actually coined out the patches.
Yeah, I guess he wants to make a pirate stick so that he can get some value out of the captain on turn 3.
How do you want to make it stick when this one just dies?
But then your 2-3 might stick.
Not sure about this.
Yeah.
But, well, anyway, now not a single pirate will stick to the board because your opponent already built his own. Built his own Fury War Axe with 2 upgrades on turn 2.
God, these hands. This looks like when I play Pirate Warrior, Lothar. This is the sort of hands that I end up seeing.
Well, patches was being drawn, actually for the first time on stream, if I remember correctly.
Right, yeah.
And that makes it difficult for Sintherius because he basically lost an entire card, which translates into a lot of damage.
Yeah, when you're going second as Pirate Warrior, the coin is your friend. The fact you've got an extra card is your friend. If you just lose that extra card going second in particular, when you're already defending every turn, it is just so difficult to bounce back from. And just the fact that Chris can curve may be enough to carry him through. But he is going to at least struggle in the very short term here.
On this matchup, basically the first player to make his minions survive for a turn and get a positive trade on his opponent's board wins the game. Unless the health totals are really low and someone can just burst an opponent down from the hand. That's usually how the matchup goes. Because when you actually play aggro against aggro, it's all about trading.
Yeah, it's really strange, right? Yeah. It quite often goes long games where, obviously, you can see, even from the cards in hand, are a great example. You just end up trading 1 card for 1 card over and over again until somebody breaks and, you know, picks up the card that isn't necessary to stick. And the way that Chris has got this big weapon, he should be able to trade 1 for 1 for the foreseeable future, where Sintherius is looking to try and get some extra value out of these cards, because if he ends up using his Arcanite Reaper to trade, he may not actually have enough damage to be a menace.
That is correct. And with a Fury War Axe that has 4 durability points, that makes it a difference between killing almost every single minion apart from Nagakose and Frozen Berserker.
Yeah, and it may even get buffed again in a minute.
And that would be like a disaster for Sintherius. So a good call with the Heroic Strike just to deny the possibility of buffing up the weapon, but oh my goodness.
Yeah, we sometimes get accused of saying that every draw is really important, but that pickup there just allowing Chris to turn this weapon into a situation now where this weapon will just kill every single minion in Sintherius' deck. Yeah. And is a big, big deal right now, because he was going to have to play the Corsair anyway just to occupy the board. And now he just gets to play it for free, unless he's going to go face with the Elite, but he wants to keep that for another removal spell, as well as the burst damage.
It seems that ChrisleBlanc is in a commanding position in this game. Whew.
Yeah, Sintherius.
It's really hard to come back from something like that. That's so much tempo loss.
Yeah, Pirates isn't really designed to kill 2 minions in a turn, so all the way through now, Sintherius is going to have to just get rid of 1 while simultaneously taking a hit. And anytime he tries to establish the board, this huge weapon that Chris has created from nowhere, he hasn't played a weapon yet this game, an actual weapon card.
And he has almost the best weapon in the game right now.
Yes, ridiculous. You wouldn't mind getting one of these from your Malkarok.
2 upgrades and an additional upgrade that came out of the Cultist makes this rusty hook actually a potent weapon of mass destruction.
The one thing that ChrisleBlanc may struggle from is he may... Oh, don't worry about it. I was going to say he may just start drawing his weapons now, and that could be a bad thing, and might get a few missed draws, but he just draws an 8-8.
He still had a Corcoran lead this turn for, you know, just to be played, so it didn't really make that much difference. But yeah, at some point he could have choked with the draws. That's true, but he was in the commanding position for the entire game, so even if a single minion just attacks once, at some point he will get there, basically.
We're seeing a lot of Bitter Tide. Do you feel that is a nod to the fact you can't ban Druid, or do you feel that that's just now the standard build for this deck?
I feel like it's the more standard build just because the metagame has shifted a little bit. There are less options of just neutralizing a Hydra just like that.
Right.
Example, of course, it can be taken advantage of because of the downside that it's presenting. So in some matchups, it's not really that helpful, but especially in racing situations, when you have an option to pay 5 mana to deal 8 damage and just win the game, it doesn't really matter if the downside is there, even available to you.
Right.
So it's a very similar situation, actually, for it's almost the same minion when you think about it, with Fel Reaver, right? We have seen that a year and a half ago, when Fel Reaver's downside was just you destroy 3 cards from the top of your deck for every single card played. But at the same time, it doesn't really matter if you lose those cards or those HP points in case of the Hydra, if you win the game first.
Yeah, if you win the game, doesn't matter what health total you're on, exactly. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like you say, Fel Reaver, people used to panic, oh no, I'm losing cards. Yeah, but you're winning the game.
Yeah, if you're an aggressive deck, it doesn't really matter if your deck has 15 cards or 45. It just matters if you won the game before the game ended for you.
So, rough-looking start here for Sintherius. I still am of the school that Druid is good in this matchup. However, you need to draw your Feral Rage, you need to draw your Wrath, you need to draw your Swipe, and then start playing minions to occupy the board when the Warrior is starting to run low on minions. But here is exactly the opposite case. The Warrior is going to spam minions on the board, and Sintherius is going to have to take time to play the Wild Growth. And although that should be a good situation to be in, it can actually just slow you down.
Yeah, but in this situation, his curve is actually not looking that bad.
Right.
He has access to Jade Spirit on the next turn, which was fine, but he was kind of lacking any kind of board control this turn. With that draw, the Jade Idol, to fill out the curve is a blessing for Sintherius because it will soak up some damage at least. And even if that's just a 1 HP minion, right?
Yep.
Still okay.
Yeah,
that means it doesn't snowball out of control because even as 1 mana minion dealing 3 damage is actually a big deal.
Choosing not to play the Wild Growth there. He did have the opportunity to play it, which would have been an interesting decision to have to make because next turn he would be able to play the Jade Spirit with 5 mana, and then all your 6 drops are so good against Pirate Warrior. Your 6 drops, Jade Behemoth in particular, really slow pirates down. And so if he does draw a 6 drop now, he may regret it in a couple of turns' time, but he did save a little bit of damage.
Yeah, it might make a difference. I understand his position. He is more defensive. He is basically saying, I don't want to die in this matchup at all because I know that when I get to play the more expensive cards at some point, I'm just going to seal the game. Yeah. Right? So that is his thinking, and I'm not blaming him, but at the same time, the quality of draws in these decks are way higher than in ChrisleBlanc's.
Yeah.
So a Wild Growth played earlier on when you have the time to do that, because he was basically having that 2 mana open, might not be the case in the future when he will be drawing cards that are not allowing him to curve out with his hero power or the Wild Growth, because he has cards like Nourish, like Behemoth, like Aya, exactly, and you're curving out at Primordial Drake. If you get that Primordial Drake 1 turn before, because you still had the choice to squeeze it in, the Wild Growth at some point of the game, it makes a huge difference. Yeah,
usually often you don't get to play your Wild Growth, but that did seem like a perfect opportunity to set it up there. He decided to save himself 2 or 3 health, which obviously is a lot of health, but let's see how that actually works out for him, because he's 1 mana behind where he could be for that 2 or 3 health, and mana is absolutely huge in this matchup as well as your health total.
It might not matter in the end, but it could.
Yeah, it's definitely a decision point that if he loses this game, he'll look back on, and if he wins this game, he'll forget ever happened. Yeah. That's how our brains work, right?
Yes, exactly. That's how it works. Every single bad draw, that only happens to you, and every single game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the only person who ever draws patches. It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
Apart from Sintherius.
Although, ask Admirable, And when he was with, I was telling him, like, I'm drawing a lot of patches, you know? And I was like, saying the same thing. It's a matter of perspective. But then he actually watched me play the game for one day, and I was like, you're kind of right.
It is interesting when you try, you've got to be so careful in Hearthstone in particular, just not to fall into that confirmation bias where you start looking for something and it happens all the time. All right, so Sintherius is getting a bit on the board. He's managed to get that wild growth snuck down. It hasn't cost him anything because he didn't draw any 6-drops, so the way it's worked out for him, it's worked out well. It's
a risk to take, and it turns out very well for Sintherius in this particular matchup right now.
Yeah, and he's managed to get into 4-4 on the Jade counter with still 24 health. This is important because he may well get time to Nourish and Wrath in the same turn now. And that can be just a game winner, because when you Nourish, obviously you draw into your Taunt minions, you draw into your Primordial Drakes, and usually your second Taunt minion wins you the game, and then you just have to draw your Feral Rage just to stabilize against like Leroy.
Yeah, in this case, as you said, the Wrath will be a game changer because it will allow to clean up the entire board for Sintherius. Let's see if Nuj will be able to pick it up. 4 draws, basically. 1 draw from the top of the deck is a swipe, so not really that helpful, since you would really like to Nourish this turn. You want to get that Primordial Drake on turn 8, so you just slam down on the board. You're at 19 health. I feel like this is the turn when you can actually risk playing the Nourish instead of the Wrath.
Yeah, and he's going to go for that.
Sorry, instead of the swipe.
Because he still may pick up Wrath as well, which will be fine. And if he just doesn't do this now, he never gets the time. And there is the Wrath. This is absolutely massive, because now he can clear, and he's got the Elephant to play next turn.
Behemoth will appear on the board next turn. It doesn't really matter if the Jade Golem is big or not, because you're getting a Taunt minion in the way. But now with that Hydra on curve, on turn 5, ChrisleBlanc is saying, holy moly, I did it again.
And now another decision point going on here now. Sintherius will play the Behemoth most likely, usually save that for the biggest attack in the deck, which is often Arcanite Reaper. But in this case, it happens to be just an 8/8 Hydra. And then he will have 1 or 2 turns in which to draw his armor ups of, he'll have Earthen Scales, he'll have Feral Rages. Any of those cards will help him just win this game. But ChrisleBlanc's got plenty of damage still coming in. If Sintherius whiffs and he's drawn a lot of cards, then Sintherius will actually lose the game. Let's see if he can get into those armors.
Although Chris is coming a little bit short on his life as well. 2 swipes would actually deal 14 damage.
Wow, and he's got the Earthen Scales as well now. So clearing up the board, and
this is a lot of armor coming down for Sintherius. 7 HP.
And importantly, this 7/7, not only is it threatening lethal anyway, or close enough to it, but even if it wasn't lethal, even if ChrisleBlanc starts armoring up, it just kills minion after minion, and the Pirate Warrior doesn't go wide enough, often enough for this 7/7 to fail. And Sintherius is going to get this done.
And ChrisleBlanc has pushed to use his hero power instead of playing a Pirate Warrior, because otherwise he would have been dead from the 7/7 Jade Golem. That means Sintherius is in a commanding position right now. Oh my god, the Gluttonous Ooze seals the game, gets 3 additional armor, and reduces the damage output from the Pirate Warrior.
Yeah, Chris has seen enough. He's a bit quick on that bottom right. I hope that doesn't cost him later on. Like we've seen some top players make some bad mistakes. We saw Naviute famously conceding when his opponent played Leroy because he assumed his opponent had lethal.
Although he was probably losing that game anyway.
He was, yeah.
Yeah, but it's kind of a bad habit. It comes from laddering too fast, I would say. I don't see any other reason why would anyone just concede the game faster in a tournament when anything can happen.
Yeah, and just get that airtime. Where are you going to be when you finish this game? You get 30 seconds extra break if you play quickly.
Yeah, in a Swiss round.
You know,
a huge difference, right?
You're going to sit around for quite a while after you've finished anyway. You just might as well sit in the comfy chairs that DreamHack provide.
All right, well, this is the mirror, almost mirror, because that's an Acolyte of Pain for ChrisleBlanc, in the form of Jade Druids. And this is a matchup where who has the biggest, baddest minion as fast as possible on the board usually wins the game.
Yeah, and you would think that if you have the Acolyte in your deck, that you would be the favorite because you draw more cards, get to your Jades quicker. But actually, and it depends if he's playing Acolyte, Pyromancer, and Moonfire, or if you're just playing Acolyte and Pyromancer. But the more of those cards you play, the worse you are in the mirror, because the more of the regular, the solid cards you've cut out. You play these cards as a bit of a nod to aggro. The Acolyte's actually pretty good, surprisingly. Moonfire's obviously good. Pyromancer's obviously good in wiping out little armies or wide armies of little guys. And actually that means that in the mirror, you are surprisingly unfavored just by making those 2 or 3 changes.
Yep. It's a very tempo-based matchup, basically. Especially since all of the spells that you have in the deck are pretty cheap.
Yep.
And Jade Idols are just the reason why you might get ahead at some point or get back into the game, because it's a cheap, big minion that you can just squeeze into a turn when you're drawing cards because you're losing card advantage. There's a lot of discussion when it comes to Jade Idols actually in this matchup. Should you use them to shuffle or not? And it depends on few situations. But usually just don't shuffle at all.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I've also seen people shuffle on turn 1 and do really well out of it, where they've set their game plan out, their hand is destroy the first few and catch up later, absorb lots of damage, and then eventually get the advantage. I agree with you. I think a lot of the time, you just don't shuffle. You just go flat out making Jades. But if your opponent gets a big Auctioneer turn when you've done that, you do tend to lose. And so it's one of those things where there is no really good general rule. You have to look at your hand and the exact situation. Yep. People try too hard in Hearthstone to just do general rules, I feel.
Yeah, that's true. There's no general rule. It all applies to the situation at hand. Sometimes it's even a matter of your opponent's mental state, because you can take advantage of an example. If your opponent is intimidated by your execution of the game, you can actually change it to a way that benefits you more, even when it's unusual.
Yeah, if you feel it's going to make him like panic or do something silly with his removal, that is definitely true. And yeah, we've been talking about mental state a lot. I think these two guys are coping really well with the pressure of being first thing in the morning. Oh, you're on stage, boys. Go for it.
First thing on Saturday morning, playing Hearthstone for big bucks and pride and glory. Sintherius went with the Innervate for the Behemoth on turn 4.
It's a good way of stopping that Acolyte. That was the reasoning there, right?
That's true. I was just still thinking maybe it has some merit to just, keep the Innervate for the Auctioneer, but at the same time, I just literally said the game is all about tempo. And if you tempo out a Behemoth and a 2/2 minion early in the game, you are ahead.
You are. And like you say, it was shutting down this Acolyte, but this Acolyte's just getting work done because he has drawn the Pyromancer combo. But it's going to be a lot of cards, but he needs a lot of cards because what he's given up by having the Acolyte in his deck is he's behind on the Jade count already.
Yep, and he used his Pyromancer just to kill 2 Jade Golems, a small 2 Jade Golems. They don't really matter that much in this matchup right now, while sacrificing a lot of tempo that turn. Basically, he didn't develop anything, and Sintherius hasn't an option to be ahead on the board right now. Heavily being favored in this matchup.
And what you've just been talking about, that second Jade Idol, what's he going to do with it? He has the Auctioneer, so he may choose to hold, but it looks like he's just going to do it. He's just going to make them. I like this a lot. He's just going for the throat.
He is going for a wide board as soon as possible. It's just 5 mana, and he already has a commanding lead on the board. It's incredible how much tempo he snapped right now.
I'm amazed there is Moonfire in this deck because he's found room for the 3-card combo of Moonfire, Acolyte, and Pyromancer, and he's still got Jade Spirits in there, which sometimes do get cut, weirdly enough, if you play the Moonfire version. So he's going to have, like, no Primordial Drakes, no anything special at all. He's taken out all of the important cards almost certainly here.
And the Primordial Drakes are important in the mirror match as well, because it's something that's going to catch up to the board a little bit, especially if you combine it with a setup previous turn. So you can squeeze that small amount of damage from swipe, set up a Primordial Drake cleanup next turn. But if he doesn't play that, he is gonna have a bad time.
There could be one, but I feel that with double Jade Spirit, there's not much room left. You lose the Ooze, you lose the Tar Creepers, you lose any sort of Yogg type stuff going on. You lose 1 Primordial Drake anyway when you make this deck, and so he's found at least 1 more spot, unless he's only playing 1 Moonfire maybe. Maybe he has 1 Primordial Drake, but he has found 1 more spot. And again, you are just so punished in the mirror match with this setup, but you're so good against aggro with it. In fact, I'm surprised he didn't queue it into the Pirates instead of the mirror match.
Yep, that is correct.
And so all this card draw is coming to nothing so far, but Sintherius needs to get the job done now, otherwise all this card draw will catch ChrisleBlanc back up.
That's true. But it's still, he's still ahead on the board because of the fact that he has the 1 turn more. In this situation, even with that auction, it doesn't really matter if he will sacrifice some tempo for the card draw, because he developed a minion on the board the same turn.
Going to be some very important card draws here from the auctioneer. Remember that both Jade Idols have gone, so he won't be able to draw into the nice, cheap way to draw loads of cards here. Obviously, Wild Growth helps, but he has got a small chance of just completely whiffing here. Don't worry about it. There's Jade Behemoth. It's the card he was looking for.
So the next Jade Golem is a 6/6. That's gonna be played most likely next turn. He has a lot of choices when it comes to squeezing in removal that turn. Basically, it all depends what will happen from ChrisleBlanc's side, but Promoter Drakes with the Wrath, or the Behemoth with Feral Rage and the Scales to get some really good trades from his side are an option as well. So all depends on ChrisleBlanc's execution this turn.
Yeah, ChrisleBlanc needs to make the decision what he's going to do with the auctioneer. Is he going to ignore it and just play all of his Jades out, or is he going to push his luck and play a whole bunch of spells and see if he's still alive at the end of it?
Oh, he's at 13 HP, so it seems like that Earthen Scale needs to come down and help him a little bit. The same goes for the Wrath. He needs minions to be cleared off that board.
Yeah, I feel like you're probably being too greedy if you play the auctioneer here. There's just a little bit too much going on this turn. Yeah. You've got that card advantage already from your Acolyte. Let's use it. You used the phrase earlier, there's no point doing things if you're dead. There's no point having all these cards if you're dead.
He still has that 1 card draw from the Acolyte. I'm really surprised that he starts with the Earthen Spell first. Interesting. Because he had option to actually buff a minion first, last, to gain more.
Yeah, he's going to kill these Jades anyway, so... All right, well, this is his turn. He is going to resist the urge to get loads of cards from Auctioneer and give himself a chance at this massive board that he's created.
And now Sintherius has to make a choice. Oh, look at that who appeared, Yogg. Yeah. That's the last resort, the saving grace for Sintherius if everything goes wrong, and it actually might be the turn when it starts to get out of control for Sintherius, because he lost the board control that he was so long in charge.
I feel that this is the last chance he gets to get a good Drake. If he doesn't play Drake this turn, he never gets a Drake worth playing. It just becomes a 4/8 speed bump for everything to just run over. So I feel he'll want to play the Drake this turn, and then just whatever he backed it up with. And like you say, he's starting to get caught up in his mind. We may have that Yogg happen sooner rather than later. ChrisleBlanc's going to have a massive card draw turn, but not a particularly threatening board turn next turn.
It's so funny when in this battle when it just changes so fast, right? The Promoted Drake, such a huge tool when it comes to finishing up trades that you have set up the previous turn, as we have seen here. Another Earthen Scales for Chris, but it's not really that useful when you don't have a minion to be played this turn. Here we go. 7/7 minion for 1 mana. Seems a good deal.
It does.
Shamans are angry. What is this card balance? Lizard.
Not even got Overload.
Yeah, exactly.
1 mana 7/7. That's pushing it a bit far. Look at all these 0 casting cards as well from ChrisleBlanc.
Broken cards, man. Broken cards.
And of course, this is where Sintherius, where ChrisleBlanc is getting the payback from all that early stuff, which, again, I've played this matchup a lot from both sides, and I'm pretty sure that the Acolyte side is is always the underdog, and it's very difficult for it to come back, but he's taking good use of all those early cards. Sintherius just did not get enough of a lead.
Interesting situation. Sintherius was ahead, but now he's fallen back again. It was a back and forth in the previous 2 turns, and might be the case when Sintherius has to push the button with the Yogg this turn.
How important is it since the Yogg nerf, like that's a year now, to still have lots of spells behind it. Obviously, in the olden days, you wanted as many as possible. Does it matter as much as it used to?
I don't think so. Like, it's hard when you have a lot of spells being already played in the game. Most likely, the Yogg will clear the entire board and will not build up board control, right? Which happened a lot of times before, because it didn't stop casting when it died, right? So you still were able to play, like, you know, card advantage cards. Let's say Call of the Wild is the perfect example, right? After the actually board clear. In this situation, the Yogg dies and have no more chances to see those cards being played out. So it makes a difference. But I still would say that in most situations you would rather have more cards being played, because it should be a reset button for the board, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it just gets diminishing returns. Where, like you say, you should just carry on and just put more and more stuff down. You'd be scared if you played too many spells, you'd actually just draw your deck and more. Looking like he's going to have to push the button very soon, though. These are getting out of hand now, and he's struggling to keep up.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, his Jades are a 9/9.
I think that's right.
No, it's an 8, actually. If I'm not mistaken. What?
I've not had enough coffee to see that far yet, Lothar. I'll go with 8. I'll agree.
Oh, it's actually 6/6. Oh my goodness. Wait, what? That's impossible. All right, we're gonna just wait for...
Yeah, see what happens. And this is where your judgment, how many times you've played your Yogg, and just get a feel for it. You can't predict Yogg like mathematically. I mean, you can predict it mathematically, but it's more than one person's going to take on. Realistically, it's just a feel thing. And whether he decides to play Yogg or not, he's going to be able to react to what happens if he does now.
It is actually
a 6/6. Wow.
Okay.
I hadn't realised he'd got that far behind, I must confess. So he feels he's got one more turn in him for this. Making sure to get that armor. And this just gives his Yogg some help, but yeah. He will be happy that he waited that one extra turn.
Yeah, he should be very happy, especially since his Aya is still alive, so he can just wait with her attack, play the Yogg first, and see the outcome. Because most likely, if there's a bolt clear, oh, he's attacking first.
I definitely attack with a 7/7. I'm not so sure I attack with the Aya.
Yeah, exactly. That was my point. If you have a Death Rattle on board, most likely you might actually be able to have board advantage after a board clear. So, interesting. Oh, he healed his opponent's face. That's unlucky.
Still hasn't killed a single minion. Spirit Echo, all those 1/1s.
All right, so now if there's a board clear...
Oh, no.
Ice block? Who knows? Oh, missed, right? That was missed. All of the minions now have corruption. Second time, yes.
He needs to kill one or two of them, or he's just dead, though, depending what that spell is, of course.
Well, it could have been an ice block, right?
It could indeed. We don't know, they don't know. That's ruled out a lot, though. He's going to proc on one just in case. We're going to find out, along with you guys, right now.
And it wasn't an ice block. Well, that finishes up the game. The Yogg was kind of lackluster.
Yeah, it casts a lot of spells of nothing.
It created a bold state, but that doesn't really help when you're already behind and staring at lethal damage from your opponent. The fact that he healed his opponent's face twice didn't really matter as well. It could have mattered if that was an ice block.
Sure, yeah. If that was an ice block, then that board state would have just come back and probably won the game. And now he has to queue his Paladin, which he didn't want to queue. So that means it could be a control Paladin.
Yeah, that could be the difference between the matchups here. Well, let's see. Well, it has Grimscale Charms.
Yeah, and Fingers, so it's not that controlling. We still don't know that much when we see a Finger, but it definitely is not straight up control.
Well, if he plays Grimscale Charms, that means that he has 6 1-drops in his deck, right? He wants to have as many 1-drops as possible to get that synergy out, sometimes even on turn 1 with the coin. So Inquisitors and Tide Colors.
Chris has got the synergy hand. If you're going to play this deck, this is the hand that you want. The one that draws you loads of cards and clears Paladin boards.
Oh my god.
Do you even play that? I feel like you want to keep that.
That's actually a very difficult turn when you think about it. There are a few options. You can coin out hero power just to kill the Murloc without losing any card advantage. Basically what you lose is of course the coin, but it doesn't really matter that much, especially since you have a lot of options. Innervate Acolyte of Pain on turn 1 when you have already a Pyromancer in hand.
Rockpool Hunter would be a big punish here for that play.
Yeah, that is very, very risky, especially since you know that your opponent is holding at least one Murloc in his hand because it got buffed. So there are not that many options, right, when it comes to the Murloc.
I thought he might actually innovate out like the Pyromancer and then play the Jade Idol.
Yeah.
That would have created a really good board for him this early on.
It's interesting. The Rockpool Hunter could have been a punish, but it happened. Sintherius didn't have it in his hand. So as usual, Murlocs want to just spiral out of control as soon as possible. Get that synergy on the board before Chris can answer those minions. Because as soon as they have a lot of HP, those Murlocs, of course, they are really hard to handle from Druid's perspective.
And what the Druid wants is exactly what it has here. It has Wraths, it has Swipes. It doesn't really worry about building those Jades up. You just sneak one in here and there as you go. As long as you're keeping these Murlocs under control, then suddenly they just become... Like Murloc Warleader right now is a 3/3 for 3. It's just a garbage card when it's sat on its own. And you just want to kill them one at a time until they run out of Murlocs. Which Finger tells you is really difficult.
Yeah, I was thinking actually about keeping the Finger in the opening hand.
Oh, the matchup's slow enough, you feel you're okay with that?
Well, he had a Hydrologist in his hand and Chum already, right?
Yeah.
So he had the early game. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Finger is a very good way to keep the pressure coming if the Druid has a good start. That would be interesting.
And there's almost no way of Druid dealing with Finger, right? It can just sit there.
Yeah, it does just sit there until it's ready to do Fingery things and just refill a board. So that's an interesting call. You're going to draw a 3-drop, a 4-drop a lot of the time.
But he was going first, so I'm not really surprised that he mulliganed it away. There's a merit to keep it on the draw.
Okay, this looks like time to Wild Growth, I think. It's a little bit risky, but I feel that you just want to get on and play it. Yeah. And when you get to do that as Druid, it's such a relief when you played your Wild Growth. These days, it used to just be automatic play on turn 2 because nothing bad would really happen to you. But these days, it's a lot harder than that to plan when your Wild Growth comes down because you're just getting slapped about by so many different decks. It's just really hard to deal with if you miss turn 2 now.
There's a lot of synergy build up early in the game, nowadays in the metagame.
Yeah. Like we're seeing here, I mean, ChrisleBlanc's dealt with a couple of Murlocs already, and you can see the damage these things are going to do to him even now.
Is he going to trade? That's the question. He is not going to trade. Doesn't make a difference, though, from his perspective. Like, he can't really play around against every single outcome from the Druid when he knows there's a Pyromancer, when he knows there are Moonfires, the Valnos. So it's pretty hard to play around all that removal while still counting the additional damage that can be dealt with a 0-mana card or with the Valnos. So I'm not really surprised that he doesn't really trade. He goes for the damage that might ending up winning him the game at some point.
This particular build of Druid is actually really hard to play. Looking at Chris's face and looking at how he's concentrating here, compared to normal Jade Druid.
Yeah, it's not that curvy, right?
Right, normal Jade Druid, it's a bit of a meme, but you kind of just play on curve and see where you end up. Give or take. In meme land, but this particular one, you've got to think, when do I want to play my Pyromancer? Do I need the 3/2 body? Am I going to need to combo it later to kill things? You know, how do I've used one Acolyte of Pain already, do I really care about the... etc. All that stuff's always in your head, and at the same time, you're still trying to do the normal Jade Druid stuff.
So the Getaway Coda was procced this turn, allowing Sintherius to replay the War Leader. The question is, does he want to do it? He knows that ChrisleBlanc is actually going into 6 mana, which is iconic for a swipe hero power.
Right.
Or in case of the Falnos, it can actually be Falnos and Swipe at the same time. So if he gets to play that Wall Leader with the Blue Gill Warrior this turn to set up a really good Oracle next turn, sorry, Lightseer, that means his only one Murloc will be alive. So he goes instead for the buff right now, which I like very much, because now it's really tough to deal with.
Yeah, and I like this as well, because if you've got an answer, then you have to use it. So you find out whether you can play your War Leader or not.
Yeah.
If the answer is played, then you have to wait. But if there is no answer, you know he hasn't got one, because he'll have to deal with this mess. And then you can definitely just drop your War Leader and do it all again. There is an answer, and so now Sintherius has to consider, well, he doesn't have to consider, there's no reason to play the War Leader now. There's no reason to play any of these cards. He needs a good pickup, in fact. That's one.
Wow, that's actually a fantastic pickup. Now he's able to refill the board after a lot of removal was played from ChrisleBlanc's side already, so... Oh,
he has just seen a swipe. This is a way of getting more resources and getting the most. And this is doing that same thing I just said a minute ago. He's just testing. Have you got that second swipe? Because you can't really even afford this to live because of Megasaurs, because of other Seers. You know, he's just going to keep testing. It's a bit slow, but he's trying to force down a spot where either he plays the War Leader or he just plays Tarim on a board of 3 minions.
It's an interesting setup. Tarim has a lot of power late game when the opponent is actually heavy on Jade Golems already. So it presents more, it's being presented more as an answer than a tempo play in this matchup, especially when you have other means of buffing your own creatures. I'm a little bit surprised that he didn't play the War Leader last turn, but I understand why. It makes a lot of sense when he wants to have more options, basically. I
like Chris's lack of greed here. Just using that Moonfire to get rid of a Murloc. If that Murloc got poisonous, or if that Murloc got any sort of decent buff, it could be a problem. So Tarim, another problem. So Chris just not being greedy with his Auctioneers, just making sure he keeps control of the board the best he can. And that is one problem people do run into if they haven't played this version enough, is they just get too greedy and die with 7 cards in their hand, which is just not right.
Yeah. The card advantage doesn't matter when you're dead.
It's just, we made that point repeatedly throughout this cast. It's just, you've got to use the cards you draw or they're valueless.
All right, well, he is facing a difficult decision again. Wow, he goes for the Tarim instead.
And pushes face.
Well, if he goes for the Tarim, there's only one way of doing this. You just go face. So I like the decision very much after he played the Tarim. And he now has 2 Murlocs that are being buffed by the damage. So that's 5, 10, 13 damage.
Chris played that turn really quickly, then he plays this really quickly, just bottom right, and gives it up. And Sintherius takes down a close and interesting, effectively a mirror match all of the way.
Yeah, that's true. With the +1 attack from the Tidecaller, because he would play the Wall Eater, that was exactly 15. This is why ChrisleBlanc just conceded.
Sintherius goes to 6-0. He needs one more match. And as I've said, he may even already make it now. Somebody on 6-3 will probably get into the top 16 here. You don't want to take that risk, but if you're 6-0, your tiebreakers are usually the best tiebreakers in the room.
Yeah, that's true. Only the players that are losing at 0-2 have a really hard time coming back into the tournament because their tiebreakers are way worse. But at the same time, we have seen at DreamHack Summer, actually, because we had a clean cut, players going back into the top 16, even with a 0-2. Who was that player?
Was it?
Osha?
Osha did it at Valencia. He was 0-2. Orange dropped out at 1 and 2. Osha was 0-2, won 7 in a row. There was a clean cut because of all the people who dropped out 1, 2, 0-2. And suddenly that 16th space just opened up when it was projected to be 17 spaces. He thought he wouldn't make it and just snuck through. This one's like the other way around. Somebody might get lucky from the pack that will be like 20 or 30 people on 6-3. One of them may sneak in. But we are going to have another match in a moment. We're going to have Lance and Caravaggio. These two guys are also 5-0, so let's have a look what they've got for us.
Probably some Renaissance paintings.
Some Renaissance paintings. So you're a Caravaggio fan by default?
Yeah, I guess you can say that. But he is American, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, I don't actually know, if I'm perfectly honest. I found his Twitter. There wasn't a lot on there, so going in blind again, I'm afraid, into this one. And Lance, seriously, guys, try Googling Lance Hearthstone. Ice Lance, Flame Lance. we haven't got a feedback form.
Yeah, even if you add player into the Google line, it doesn't really change much.
Ice Lance hits the player for 4.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you get.
Pretty hard to Google someone who has a name like that.
So if you want to not be Googled when you enter a Hearthstone tournament, just call yourself Fireball Hearthstone, and that's the end of that. Sure. So, same deal.